Okay, good morning, everybody. Uh, we are going to start in just a couple minutes. We'll give people time to dribble in here a little bit at a time. And meanwhile, I will give you a little introduction. I'm Dr. Jaelline Jaffe. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been working with misophonia for since, I don't know, 2012 or 13. Seen lots of people, and I will be talking from that perspective. You will also be engaging here with Dr. Marsha Johnson, who is an audiologist, and she actually was the first one to really identify this condition. She didn't call it by its current name. It's got a name that doesn't really explain it well, but it's the name that stuck. That she started working with this condition way before the beginning of this century, actually, before the beginning of this century. And we also have John Smoot, who likes to say he's just a guy with misophonia, if I said that correctly, the way that he tells it.
And I'm here to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm here to talk about it. So we are your panelists today, and we are here to answer questions. And we do not have a prepared presentation for you. We're going to answer as many questions as we can. Here's how that works. Please post your questions in the Q&A. It's down at the bottom of your screen, probably, and that is where questions should go. John will be the one who's mostly monitoring those questions. If you have some other things you want to talk about, you can put it in the chat. If you have some technical question, you could put it in the chat, and our wonderful office manager, Jackie, who is behind the misophonia butterfly over there, will be picking up any of those sorts of things if need be. And you can chat with each other if you have something you want to say, but any questions to the panel, please put them in the Q&A. A couple of other things. There is also at the bottom a closed caption button. If you would prefer not to be listening to our voices, you are welcome to mute us and just use the closed captioning. Also, this is being recorded, so after we are through, it will be posted on the Misophonia Association website, and you can go back and watch or listen at that time. This is our third free clinic of 2026. We've been doing this for a number of years now, and we really enjoy the opportunity to share some information and ideas with people. We are going to go off screen if we need to take a drink or cough or something else that would be visually or auditorily disturbing. We will go off screen or we will mute, as we hope people always do when they're in these kinds of gatherings around misophonia. So I think I have covered pretty much everything that are the basis of what we're doing here. There are two upcoming events which we will highlight maybe later on or at the end in our conversation that are we're also engaged in conducting and that you're all welcome to participate in. So meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and start doing whatever it is we're going to start doing. So, Dr. Johnson, I was noticing we have two Dr. J's and we have a J.
That's a requirement for being part of the group.
Right. So, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to pass it to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jaffe. It's been a complete pleasure working with Dr. Jaffe now since around 2012. I would like to add a little to our preface today because I do want people to understand who is the Misophonia Association and what are we doing. So we started the association, we founded it formally in 2013. And this was because in 2011, Joyce Cohen, who is somebody I met, wrote an article for the New York Times about misophonia and my work in the field and in the issue of this new condition and whatever it was. And that drew a massive attention through the New York Times article. And that's how I think Dr. Jaffe heard about misophonia in this way. And we came together and we decided we wanted to make a nonprofit organization. We wanted a support organization, say, like the Kidney Association or the Heart Association. And so there's a few of us have been here for a very long time, including Dr. Cindy Simon, who is an audiologist from Florida. And these individuals are volunteers. We have a small board of directors and we have volunteers, and our whole goal is to try to learn more, promote more research into the condition, to just provide support and meaningful information that could be, you could consider it close to a truthful kind of information, as opposed to, hey guys, here's a lemon. If you put it in your ear, you'll be cured. So we wanted to shy away from those opportunists who have indeed come along in 29 years and tried to help us all in a way that really isn't very helpful. So what we have here today is an association that provides a lot of free activities like this clinic today, but we are nonprofit and we certainly depend on donations. Recently, we received a very generous donation, which we really appreciate, because we don't pay ourselves in this way. We're not like a corporation that has people who receive salaries and so forth. So I just wanted to make that clear to you, and we're really glad you're here. I hope you'll think of this today, as a coming to one of our offices and having 90 minutes to talk with us. So you have two people here. I have 29 years of experience. I discovered this condition, or I say uncovered. It's been around a long time. It was called other things in the beginning, like hysteria and mental illness, but we have uncovered it. We're uncovering it, and we work directly with patients, both of us. And so this is going to be a great session, and I hope you get a chance to ask your questions.
Okay, shall we get started then?
Yeah.
Folks, I see questions popping up in the chat. They need to be in the Q&A, okay? And I'm going to have to stick to that rule and only answer or put out there questions that show up in the Q&A. The chat is for you to talk to each other. I know some of us know each other, and that's why we have that available to you. Right now, we only have one question in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee. And by the way, if you want to be anonymous and it's not in your Zoom name, put it in the text that you're sending, because I can't guarantee whether or not we'll mention your name by accident or on purpose, either way. Okay. So the first question, and the only question, get those questions in there, folks, is how to deal with visual repetitive motions. Sunglasses don't work.
The reason why misophonia is a misnomer, because it's not a sound necessarily. Go ahead, Marsha.
Yeah, this is a multi-sensory condition. We don't understand, even begin to understand yet, the complexity of how people experience things like visual misophonia, or I believe the word mesokinesia is used too, which kind of fits in a way. And for decades now, we've heard patients saying like repetitive gestures and innocent sort of idle movements, or actually even seeing items that might cause triggers, like seeing a package of chewing gum. I hate to mention triggers, but I'll use just as few as possible. But people, I remember somebody saying they were on a bus and they went by another bus and they looked through the window and there was a person on the other bus eating something that they could see. And again, this really bothered them. So what do we do about that? I mean, one of the simplest things I've tried to work with people on, and I'd like to ask you a question back because we've told people in the clinic and at conventions, and we have an annual convention, we've said to people, why don't you just turn your head and walk away or turn around? And these people who are in your group, they've tried to explain to me that there's some sort of fascinating horror that makes these individuals feel like they can't just close their eyes or turn away. There's something about this situation that I was trying to think of an example of something similar, and maybe you have one for us, but what we've come up with is indeed those mountaineering sunglasses with the side blinders like this, and they're the darkest you can get, and you have to purchase them from mountain shops. You can't just get the over-the-counter Walmart type sunglasses, and they have worked. And I will remember, I'm going to add one more thing here. One lady had a hat with a what do they call that? The front there, the beak, not a beak, but
Visor,
a
visor.
type thing. Yeah. And she actually took fabric and created a curtain over her face that could be rolled up or dropped down out of sweatshirt material, black. And she used that and she made kind of a joke out of it. And we were sort of enthusiastic about it because we thought it was a pretty good idea. You know, she could just roll it down. So it is curious, how does the visual system, one more note here as an audiologist, your visual system is completely tied into your auditory system. It's a very interesting thing, but we have to study this quite a bit because eye movements are part of a vestibular system, and we use it to diagnose things like Meniere's disease or otolithic displacements. And the fact is that perhaps in your brain, somewhere back in the brainstem area, most likely, there is a conjunction, there's a common thing going on there where those visual nerves are responding to what you're seeing. And they're giving you a hyper response in the same way misophonia does. They are not processing properly. And then it's involved somehow with your memories because people do develop specific kinds of triggers that are related to a specific thing or someone. So this is a fascinating question. I really am not even sure who would be the right scientist to investigate something like this in terms of physiology, not with the psychology of it, but with just pure physiology. Like when you hit your knee with a hammer at the doctor and your foot jerks up, you're not in control of that. That's something that is a reflex, and that we know is an involuntary reflex. And so we would say, does mesokinesia involve involuntary reflexes?
Well, one of the things that we know or believe from the standpoint of certain research is there's probably some involvement with what are called mirror neurons. So you see something and it almost feels to you like you're doing it in a way. It's a kind of it's sort of like that thing where people sometimes mimic a sound that they hear as a way of dispelling the tension that they have about it. And it may be that it's connected to that in some way. I think the thing about, well, I just can't turn away. I'm glued to it. It's sort of like you seeing a car wreck or something. You want to drive past it and not look at it, but you just feel compelled to look at it. I think that partly maybe that comes from the same place as the auditory reactivity that is maybe related to a sense of danger that we had from ancient times, that certain sounds were potentially indicating danger. Well, maybe certain movements have that same sense to them, that they are indicators of some kind of possible, I might be in danger because something over there is moving and I have to keep my eye on it. I can't take my eye off of it, or I could get, jumped by that saber-toothed tiger or something like that. So that may be what goes along with it. So besides the sunglasses, and the visor, I've known people who use hoodies, so they'll be sitting at the dinner table with their family and they've got a hoodie on and it blocks some of the vision to the side, or they're sitting behind a little barrier of some sort, so they're not looking at people if the visual of looking at their family members is a problem for them. So whatever you can do to kind of block it until hopefully you get to the point where you can find ways to manage it, work around it, tolerate it, something like that. I think we could go on
Well,
to,
I have a little bit to add here, if you don't mind, Dr. Jaffe. Is that okay?
sure.
Here's the thing. If you get Dr. Johnson here talking about these things, you have to remember I've had 29 years of thinking about this and seeing thousands of people and talking to thousands of people. And my mind is very active. So it works nonstop. And I could probably talk 90 minutes about mesokinesia. I could if you asked me, because I want to bring another side point. Part of the side point people have told me is that, for example, it's not always associated with eating. Like we're talking about gestures or repetitive, kind of useless movements that fidgety people make, unthinking. And they have let me know in the clinic that, like, simply somebody that waves their foot or twirls their hair, these kinds of movements, for some reason, in the person that has misophonia, creates a kind of underlying, very deep anger and rage and irritation. And they've told me that perhaps they have, maybe this is someone that they love and live with, and they've told them 1,000 times, please don't, like, do this thing. And they really want the person to remember and they want them to stop doing that thing. Yet the person falls into this kind of useless movement, and this builds up into some kind of a Greek tragedy and drama in the mind of the person that has misophonia. And most of the time, people have told me that they don't want to react. They try not to. They try to calm themselves down and remind themselves, but it's almost impossible. And so this is a huge problem. I didn't know. It took me several years actually to realize that these things were happening along with noises. And that was back about 99 or 2000, and I was like, this is more complicated than anybody understands. So I give you sympathy for this problem, and I hope there's going to be research in that direction. And even today, I was reading recent research articles, and a lot of them, they just want to say it's all about the sound. It's all about the sound. But we have to keep promoting the fact that you can even have tactile triggers, you can have memory triggers. I really want to look into memory triggers because people can think back to a time when they were having very bad time and they can call up a kind of shadow event just from their memory of the event. Like anybody that's had trauma, anybody that's undergone something that's upsetting, and they think back and they can start to get upset again. So I hope this helps a little to at least say we recognize you, we sympathize with you, we want to put you on the list of things that need to be looked at.
Okay, that's a good segue to the next question I was going to bring up. It's kind of a popular question. Have you seen a pattern or connection between misophonia sufferers and trauma?
Yeah, I'll take that on. I noted that question. I marked two of them that I thought I might be able to address, and that one is one. There's a lot of theory and speculation about the connection between trauma and misophonia. Trauma is defined in terms of the person's experience of an event, not the event itself. Two people could be in the same situation, in the same exact circumstances, and one person could be traumatized and the other person maybe not. And that has to do with a lot of history, personal history. personal vulnerability, and so forth. Trauma is not necessarily, sometimes it's referred to as capital T and lowercase t. Trauma with a capital T are the things that people used to think were the only definition, which would be you got held up at gunpoint or kidnapped or something like that. But trauma with a lowercase t usually refers to more of a pervasive, ongoing situation that is relatively inescapable. That's often what happens. It's thought maybe to be related to childhood experiences where something was going on that you were uncomfortable about. It wasn't necessarily that somebody was assaulting you directly, but maybe there was just uncomfortableness in your living environment and it was extreme pressure and began to feel personality eroding to you in some way. So there's a lot of research going on with this. Some of the more recent approaches to working with misophonia directly consider trauma, and address they address it through either hypnosis or through memory reconsolidation. There are some other words for things like that, but they're looking at what happened in the past and how can we potentially untangle some of those webs that are holding on to you from something that happened before. The people who are working from that direction find some success with that. And so I would say the answer to your question about is it possible that it's related is yeah, it's possible that it's related. Does that mean everybody who has misophonia had a trauma that occurred? Probably not, but maybe some people did. I don't know if you want to add to that. I did mark another question that I will go back to. Do you want to say anything about that, Marsha, before I end?
Yeah, but I would like to say something about that because I think of people holistically. I've always in my career tried to see a human being in front of me, a whole human being. And the human life is made up really of a series of experiences. You have exposures and experiences in your whole lifetime that add up to you. And you have inherited sometimes genetic and personality traits. We all know people who are the life of the party. We know people who are introverted, who rarely talk. We can look at different personality types and how they respond to things. And we can certainly look at people's temperaments. There's stoic people, there's people that I'm one of them, talk. I always say, why use one word when 1,000 will do? I'm pretty famous for that quote because I open my mouth and it's like Niagara Falls. And I never finish all the thoughts I have in my head. But honestly, a lot of life could be perceived as trauma. A lot of life. There are things that happen in the most innocent way that can cause us to feel a lot of emotions and feelings. And when we feel those emotions and feelings, what we're doing in our body is we're producing cortisol and adrenaline. We're making biochemical substances in our body that affect our body. And they've found in studies just recently, again, these studies from the Miller Fund, these family that gave $15 million, and the Misophonia Research Fund was started in 2019. They found that people that have misophonia have pupils that dilate and heart rate that increases during stressful moments like trigger moments. Well, that really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, I feel, because, if I was hiking in the Oregon desert and a rattlesnake was right in front of me, I bet my pupils would dilate, and my heart would speed up. These are very tied in responses. But along with these experiences, we have memories. And so memory is highly involved in misophonia. And it's going to be very interesting to watch the psychologists like Dr. Jaffe and the neurophysiologists like these scientists doing this kind of research to see if they can come together. One thing they know, and this has been around for a while with Suchbinder's work from London, is that when people that have misophonia are exposed to images that provoke the feeling of misophonia, they have changes in brain waves. and they have changes in central nervous system functioning. So I think somewhere is the answer in there. And I don't know, again, myself, I don't see that a single trauma causes misophonia because there's a huge genetic stream of inheritance through families that develop misophonia. So I don't know, but I do think you could say to yourself, it's not helping you, it doesn't help you to have terrible trauma that could have invited a lot of things to live inside your head and your heart and your biochemical electrical system. We have to look at the whole thing.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. For our next question, I see that Dr. Jaffe has marked it. And if I could just add a suggestion to it, the question is any closer to getting it in the DSM? And there may be some people here who don't know what the DSM yet is, so you might add that explanation as well for those of us that aren't aware.
There are two code books that are used in the medical and psychological world. The ICD is an international coding book, and the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And that is the book that's used by the psychiatry movement in the United States mostly. The DSM-5 TR is the current edition. It was printed, I think, published in 2022 as DSM-5, and then the TR was revised, and then it was revised again a little bit. So that the basis of it, though, was 2022. It is up for renewal. It's being revised. There have been many proposals to the people who work on these things to include the diagnosis of misophonia in there. As you all undoubtedly know, there is no such diagnosis in the code book. So if you go to the doctor and you say, my child is experiencing this, that, the other thing, and I think they have misophonia, and if the doctor doesn't know what that is, they look in a code book and they say there's no such thing. Well, there's no such thing yet in the book. I think the holdup on that is we have enough research done to more definitively be able to say, is this a standalone condition or is it a subset of something else? Is it a part of anxiety? Is it an anxiety disorder? Is it a separate condition? Which I think it is. I think it has so many different aspects to it that are not accounted for by any other diagnosis that I can see in the book myself. So I think it's a standalone, but they didn't ask me where they should put it in the book. So it'll get where, but it is going to be in there, I'm sure. There's a big push for that to happen. When is that going to happen? Hopefully in the next edition, which is probably due in the next year or two at the most, we hope. That would be my answer to that question. And I don't think we need to go any further with that. John, there's another question in there that's yes, Marsha.
I'm probably always going to have an addendum to your comments, Jaelline. I hope you don't mind. But first of all, we need to get a diagnostic code because then your medical insurance has something to use for you to bill for services that you want to receive or treatments. And so this is very important to patients. And in my clinic, luckily the audiologists have a code. That's where it all got started with audiology because we have abnormal auditory perceptions. And that's a code that we could use to bill for things like devices or evaluations. And only audiologists had that code. And so what's really happening with that code is you've got great bulls in the pasture. And some of the bulls represent psychology and some of the bulls represent neurophysiology. And the problem has been we haven't had enough actually scientific research to throw it one way or the other. So if it's just an emotional issue, then the psychologist can do things with it, like if you have a phobia about something. But if it's truly auditory processing and brain processing disorders, that becomes an issue of blood and guts, basically, neurological tissue and chemical functionings, electrical functionings that you're not really in control of, but you're certainly reacting to. So there have been 4 or 5 definitions proposed for the DSM. And so far, we don't have like field wide agreement on one of these possible choices. Everyone's writing from their own point of view. So we need the code. Hopefully, we'll get the code, and hopefully, it'll be based on science and not just some sort of political maneuvering.
Okay. And just to tag on to that, a therapist, if they're going to try to put a code in there, really the only reason I can think of for using a code is for that insurance purpose. I mean, it doesn't really matter otherwise. And so any billable code that is accurate could be used. I almost always use generalized anxiety disorder as the code because I don't know anybody with misophonia who isn't anxious. They might have been anxious before, but they're certainly anxious with this. So it's a perfectly legitimate, if narrow, diagnosis, and it will be billable to insurance. What's up next, John? You're muted. You're muted, bud.
Sorry about that. I believe you said you had tagged another question here, but I'm not finding it. Maybe you could just
I
cover.
didn't I didn't tag it. I noticed it. Okay. This is one that gets asked occasionally. And the questioner mentioned having discussed it with Dr. Johnson many years ago, apparently. And it is not the most common. So I'm hoping that we can address it without taking a lot of time with it because it is not the most common symptom, but it definitely is a real symptom, which is that for some people, the sounds or whatever the triggers are cause some kind of what seems to be sexual arousal. It isn't really. It's an experience or a sensation, usually genital sensation. It isn't sexual, but that's what it seems like. And it's a very uncomfortable reaction because it isn't asked for. It's sort of like the doctor tapping the knee and the foot pops up. It's something that you didn't intend, you didn't do on purpose. It's just what your neurological system is doing in reaction to that sound or whatever the trigger is. And it's uncomfortable. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's no different than people having any other kind of a reaction to a sound. It's just harder to talk about because it looks like it falls in a different category, which it isn't really. That's what I think. And as far as what to do about it, any of the same kinds of things you're going to learn how to do, I hope, with any other sorts of triggering reactions. Somehow tone down your reactivity through various modifying approaches, sound generating devices to keep you from hearing some of those sounds, uh, other sorts of technologies or approaches using, somatic approaches, the hypnosis people. There are some, I believe there are a couple of occupational therapists that maybe have joined this call that are in the, if I saw the name correctly, and they have some approaches that might be useful. The challenge with any seeking any help is finding somebody who's familiar enough with misophonia to be able to be of assistance. And that's kind of tricky sometimes because people sometimes think they know, they think they can help, but they really don't know enough about it to direct things in the right way. I mean, for example, people often mistake misophonia for a phobia. It is not a phobia. You're not afraid of sounds. But if you treat it like it's a phobia, the proper treatment in the psychology world, the number one treatment for a phobia is exposure therapy. And exposure tends to make matters worse for people with misophonia. One of my clients said something along the lines of, I'm exposed to this sound all the time. What makes somebody think that exposing me to this sound in their office is going to help any better than it? I'm exposed to it all the time anyway. So if you if you seek some assistance, please find someone who understands misophonia and doesn't just imagine that they can help.
I,
So,
I would like to give a slightly different take on that. I think you're just going to have to leave room for me every time, Dr. Jaffe, probably. Um, this phenomena points at the possible site for the mesophonic experience in the brainstem area. This is a physiologic issue, really, because you have 12 sets of cranial nerves. If you remember from science and biology, you have these 12 sets of cranial nerves, and 8 of them stay within your head, and they operate your tongue and your eyes and your ears and your mouth. And but 2 of them, one on each side, run down into your body, and this is the vagal nerve or the vagus nerve, and that word in Latin means traveler. This is a nerve, it runs down your neck, it runs down and it innervates your heart, your lungs, your entire digestive system, your organs, and it makes its way to your genitals. And it is responsible and involved with your lower abdomen area. So, if indeed misophonia, I've heard about this since way back when, and there's a small percentage, yes, but it's so difficult for people to even bring up that sometimes they don't mention it, and then small little whispers came, and then we've had a couple of conversations about it. But if you imagine that this is a somewhere very elementary, um, let's call it a signal distortion or a processing distortion. So the problem that's happening in your brain is when you enter the airport, not when you're getting at the gate. So imagine these cranial nerves, which are conveying all kinds of information. Somehow your vagal nerve is involved in this system for some of you, and you're getting a non-desired neural stimulation. And that's what people have reported. And there is some small study and interest in this actually going on now in the field. So we do hope to find out more, but you're not imagining it, you're not creating it, you're not misinterpreting it. It's actually happening. So don't give up yet. We need a support group for you folks because it's very, well, I don't know if I'd call it upsetting, but I think that's pretty close. So anyway, I just wanted to add it's probably physiological, and it's probably some slight problem, a malfunction in the system.
Okay, agreed.
okay. I found something here that I'd like to address. And it's not a question, it's a statement. Someone's just sharing something. I'd like to address a statement. Thank you, Gladys Menk. You left your name on. I warned you. We might say your name if it's there and I don't see the word anonymous. Simple statement, though. Happens in church, in doctor's office, waiting rooms, etc. So we've gone from talking about sexual reactions to church now. Okay, bad joke. I have walked out of church because of triggers. I've walked out of a bar because of triggers. Do I still go to churches and bars? Yeah. I'm not going to give up my life for misophonia. It dominates enough. And so what I just would like to encourage people to do, and I've made videos about that, I've made specific videos as I've walked out of church because I was so triggered. Try to live the most normal life you can. You are not defined by misophonia, okay? I'm very fond of the phrase, know your tools. Now, for me, the tools are very basic. You may share them. You may have other tools, but do what works for you. So I almost always, there's been times when I failed myself and forgot, have my AirPods with me, my earplugs, and the most important thing, me, the decision maker. And yes, there are times when you will need to leave a situation because there is no other tool but your feet. Fine. But try to live the most normal life. Don't let this thing keep you indoors all the time. And I realize that some of us have such an advanced stage of this that there is no other way. But do the best you can. Try to enjoy your life. Don't let misophonia ruin it for you. Simple, but I feel words to live by, and I say them often. And now we'll go back to an actual question.
Good job, John.
Thank you.
I tagged another one in there.
Oh, you did.
I did.
You actually tagged the one I was going to grab. We're on the same.
Good.
Okay. How do you parent a misophonia teenager when she can't stand to be in the same room as her mom and also won't communicate via text, email, notes? We've heard this 1,000 times. Go for it.
That is why I tagged it. That is such a common experience. I mean, first of all, the best thing I can say to you is you're not alone in that one. Parents and teenage people with misophonia are a very strange mix. They this actually the first introduction I had to misophonia was watching a 2020 episode, I believe it was, where there was a mother and a daughter and they couldn't be in the same room together. And as I watched it, I thought that looks like it's a neurological problem, the way that it was being played out, and it's got a lot of psychosocial family overlay to it. And so that's the way I approach it. I see a lot of teenagers, and this is the one of the big things. We can't be in the same room. My teenager won't talk to me. My teenager hates my voice. My teenager can't stand anything I do. One way I think of it, I hate to put it this way, but in a way, it's a backhanded compliment, sort of. I think that kids in particular hold it together a lot of the times. They hold it together at school. They don't want to blow up at their friends because it's embarrassing and their friends could ostracize them. And, who needs you around? I don't want to be your friend. You're a jerk. You look at you, you yell at me for nothing. So I think they hold it together. And by the time they get home, the tension level is extreme. And they're going to blow up somewhere, and so they blow up at home. In a strange way, it's saying home is a safe place. I can fall apart at home. My family maybe hates what I do, but they're not going to kick me out of the house, I hope. So if you can start from the point of thinking of it that way, this kid is in some way saying that I'm safe for them to be so obnoxious to because I'm not going to excommunicate them from the family. That being said, it's very hard not to take these things personally. No parent wants to have a child, raise a child, and then have that child turn on them with these vicious comments and I can't be in the same room with you. And some kids, even to the point of taking over control of the family. Demanding that the parent not talk in the house and things like that. My thought about all of this, coming from the family system psychology point of view, kids push boundaries all the time. To put misophonia aside for a minute, kids push boundaries. It's how they find out how the world works. They try things. They see what happens if they do this. Do they get in trouble if they do that? And they don't like it when they get in trouble. But on the other hand, they need that kind of structure. They need a parent and a family that isn't going to cave in. They need the security and the safety of knowing that they don't have more power than everybody else, even though they think they would like to have more power. So I think of it as in that sort of way that the parent has to somehow end up being or start out being and maintain being the one that's in charge of what happens in the house and hopefully reasonably. It's unreasonable for a kid to hit their parent. So that would be one boundary. I understand you're angry. You may not hit me. Yeah, I understand that you're very upset by something I did or said. I know that you want to scream at me. Okay. How about if you scream in a pillow? How about if you scream outside? How about if you throw a ball against the wall really hard and get some of that frustration out? It's one of the hardest things to be the parent and have a teenager who won't talk to you. And the note that was in there also apparently won't text or anything else, which makes it even harder. Looking at it from the kid's side, they have isolated themselves and they're extremely lonely in that hole that they've dug for themselves. And it's coming from a legitimate place, but they need to find other ways to work around this. I would suggest you consider getting some kind of family therapy around this. At least somebody has to have the ability to take a breath and step back and not be too reactive. And my heart goes out to you. It's one of the worst positions to be in as a parent. Marsha.
Yes. So I want to ask a question if you're still on the chat here, how old is this child? I would like to know.
Person said teenage. I don't, yeah. So,
Okay.
I'm waiting for them to give us a number.
While we wait on that, let me address another statement very quickly from Kimberly Worst. Where do I find a support group? I've already been with Quiet. I think she means So Quiet, and I'm looking for an over 50 age group. Facebook. There are a ton of groups on Facebook, and I'm sure I know there's at least a few Reddit groups out there if that's your thing. Although I don't know if there's that many 50-year-olds in Reddit groups, but they're out there. You can find them over 50 mixes, etc.
And you could always start one. So did we get any kind of response yet or no?
15-year-old girl not talking to mom.
So let me talk about some practicalities. So misophonia often has its onset somewhere between 9 to 13 years old is the largest number of onset of this population, at least that I discovered in my own research over these 30 years. And so the worst the worst time in my clinical point of view is usually from about 13 to 15 or so. It is the terrible years where they're so still in the child phase, and they don't have skills developed yet. They don't have the brain maturity to handle this. And when I was on the Today Show, it was about this girl that couldn't stand her mother's voice. And the mother would follow her around trying to talk to her because we want to talk to our children. And it's one of our natural things. And that just becomes so difficult when the form of misophonia is the parent's voice. And you have to keep in your mind, one thing is just as they go past 18 into their 20s, things get so much better in almost every case. Almost every case. The 15-year-old is in the worst place of life for people with misophonia. They have to go to school all day. They have to be driven everywhere. They have to live in their family home. They have no options. And after they get older and their brain matures and they get their own place and they go off to college, things definitely improve and just they learn how to handle life better. So for right now, you may not be able to be in the same room with your child. Okay. That just may not work out. What you can do, you can use Post-it notes. You can put a blank notebook on the dining room table and you each take turns every day writing a little note as to something important like today. Remember, you're going to the dentist or just communication because you want to communicate. I love you. I hope you have a good day. Whatever you want to use that for. But if they don't want to text, maybe when they text, they hear your voice responding. That's an association that's very strong. These other things might sound a little odd, but what you do in this phase, I've told many, many families over the year is, so you can't spend a lot of time with this child right now, but what can you do? So can you guys develop a hobby together? Can you go horseback riding once a week? Can you go drive go-karts? Can you go fishing along very noisy rivers? Can you go roller skating? Can you take up line dancing somewhere? You go do something very noisy. You go bowling. You have a social activity once a week for an hour, and then you connect in that way. So you have this little thread of memories that you're building as you go along. The other thing I think that's very important, the second thing is, can you send them away? Do they have aunt, uncle, a farm, a ranch, somewhere they can go work on for the summer? Do you have, because when they leave home, they do better. They get away from their main trigger, and their 15-year-old can go spend the summer with her aunt in Idaho, learn how to can and sew and ride horses and do the things I did, sterilize calves. I mean, it was a very interesting experience. So they do better if you get them out of you're in our house and this is where we live, and try to get new experiences and try to find ways to get them out of the house from 8 to 5 every day. So they're doing clubs or college courses or activities because they do better in different situations, That's another thing to kind of refresh and reset the situation. There was one other thing. Oh, the third thing I do encourage families with these 15-year-olds is to create an oasis of noise in their bedroom. So you guys spend some time to construct the most amazing bedroom with Alexa and chimes and air conditioners and fountains and fans and music venues or whatever it might be, light shows, laser shows. They have a thing now, whales swim around on your ceiling. Try to create this sensory immersion. So when they do leave, they get to go to this place where they feel comfortable and safe, and they can get some respite with headphones or AirPods or things like that. And the final little piece is hard, but when the child is with you and you're in the room and you're desperately wanting to spend time and they leave, do not say, don't go. I'll be better. Don't go, because you can't not speak. So just let them go and agree with them. Sit down, let them go and say, if you feel like that, you can stand up and leave, but don't swear or throw things or hit or those things. But if you need to leave, just go ahead and go. And with my blessing, I'll be here when you get back later, whenever that might be. So I hope these are helpful, practical solutions. They do improve the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So
remember, it's not a behavioral issue. It's a physiologic issue. It's like having diabetes. You can't say to the diabetic child, stop making your blood sugar go up. Just eat your cake. That would sound ridiculous. So I have said this to many sets of parents, and they have told me that it has been helpful.
Dr. Jaffe, did you tag another question? Okay, I'll let you take the lead on it.
I did. This is a something else in the household type of question. Do you think it is reasonable to set some kind of schedule for rooms such as the kitchen? That's the basis of this question, where certain people are going to be allowed to be there or not be there at certain times to work around the person with misophonia. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I've had people have some kind of a system that the kid texts and says, I need to come downstairs and get such and such from the kitchen. Is anybody there? And somebody's there, then maybe they finish what they're doing and then they text back and they say, okay, I'm leaving the kitchen. Or you have a specific time if that works for you. Or you have a sign you hang on the door if there's a door that they can see somebody's in there and open and closed, like a store or something like that. Absolutely. Same thing for the dinner table. I think one of the ways to manage, that's one of the first questions that I hear from parent comments, complaints, problems. We can't eat dinner together anymore. Okay, that's very common. And so one solution to that, as Dr. Johnson was saying, is find other things you can do together. But given that a lot of families want to have that time around the dinner table, that's the time that they catch up with each other. How's your day? What are you doing this weekend? You can manufacture time around that works. You can make it work. You can say, all right, person with misophonia eats, the rest of us sit here, we sit on our hands, we don't eat. We have a conversation, we're all together. When they're done eating, they leave the table, then we eat. Or the other way around, everybody else eats, and when they're done eating, then the person with misophonia comes and they sit down and people don't eat at the same, so you're respecting their need for you not to be eating at the same time that they're there, but you still find a way to have family time at the table. So it's doable. You have to find ways to coexist in this house under the same roof. Just do.
Yeah, I would second that. I have people set up eating areas around the home, and set a placemat and silverware and a glass, and so that there are 4 or 5 places to eat in your home. Eating is fueling. Eating is providing your body with calories so you can function. And I like to think of the fact my husband can eat a whole dinner in about 5 minutes. So you can set a timer for 10 minutes and let everybody get their food and then come to the table with no snacks or no drinks and play a family game and spend time with those games where you're like, what about your day, and that kind of thing, and make that a really wonderful protected time to be together and separate the two activities. And King and Queen of England never ate together. They sit 50 feet apart. I mean, not every culture crouches around a log cabin handmade wood table and eats cornbread and deer. I mean, live it up a little, change the paradigm for this family member that you love, and Not coddle them. I'm not saying that. I'm saying make it easy for the kid with diabetes. Make it easy for them and you. What I admire most about these children is the courage they have. Most of them will come to the table every single time thinking, I'm going to do better. This is going to go away. I'm going to get through this. And then they're so frustrated, these 9, 10, 12-year-olds, when that doesn't happen. And they're miserable and they have to leave. And they suffer with this. If you ask them about it, you can find out things from them, like, how does it make you feel? And, you know, how do you feel when you have to leave? And they'll tell you how depressed and sad they are, shamed. They feel ashamed. And it's not the right thing to do to somebody that has a legitimate medical condition, I don't think. You know what I'm saying?
Well, totally.
So I like this next question. And I'll tell you the answer is yes, but what I'm looking forward to is the more extended version of the answer that I know you two are going to give. Are there different levels to misophonia, a person's response to triggers?
Yeah, and I'll take that one first because when I started in misophonia, you have to remember nobody knew what it was. I called it selective sound sensitivity syndrome after about 3 years. I really didn't know what to call it. I didn't know if I should call it anything, frankly. And so there were absolutely no materials for assessing these individuals. There was nothing. It was like no atmosphere on the moon. So I literally had to create questionnaires, rating forms, intake forms, everything you can think of. I had to write letters of referral to different medical physicians, and there just wasn't anything there. And there was this ocean of people. By the third year, I had 5,000 people on a Yahoo support group. So I created the MAQ. It's the Misophonia Assessment Questionnaire. I just made it up and used it for years. And actually, if over the years, a few different researchers have validated it, which I'm not a research scientist. I'm a frontline trench, put a band-aid on you person, you know. And so now there's a lot of these kind of questionnaires, but there's definitely mild, there's moderate, there's severe, and there's profound. And many times Jaelline can talk to this, but they are married to comorbid conditions as well. When you get into that really profound area where these people haven't left their bedrooms in 15 years, there are other factors that you have to assess. So it's kind of hard to find the right professional. We don't have a mesophoniologist. You have to go from pediatrician to neurologist, look at you nuts because you could put your tongue out and wiggle your eyes. And who do you go to that really understands how to assess fully for misophonia?
I'll let that be. Go ahead, John, on to
Oh,
something.
okay. By the way, folks, y'all are putting some great questions out there. And let me say this just in case it needs to be said. Sorry that we're not going to get to all of them, but we are doing the best we can. Okay. I actually know a few people that are going through this right now. Can misophonia be genetic, or is it more likely that the long-term or developmental experience of having a parent or loved one with misophonia can cause you to develop it too as you grow? Example, learning in your childhood that these sounds trigger this person, so your brain, I just spit all over myself. It's like your brain develops them as triggers too. Sorry, folks.
Okay. Yes. Um, there's a lot of research going on to try to determine what is the cause. So we've gotten as far as the wonderful piece that came out it was published in 2017 by Sukhbinder Kumar and his group that said, guess what? There's a specific area of the brain that's lighting up here in this research that people with misophonia have a reaction to these sounds and people without misophonia do not. And it's not just somewhere in the brain, it's in this particular spot. So we know that it's
All
neurological.
you off on this floor. Sorry.
Okay. We know that it's neurological, but we don't know why. We don't know if somebody was born with that uh, propensity or possibility or tendency, and something sets it off. It seems like it starts very quickly, like a switch gets flipped, and all of a sudden, child is screaming at somebody at the table. We don't know if it's developmental or what's now called epigenetic. It's like doesn't change the genetics, which is what you're born with, but epigenetics changes the way that things happen because of the circumstances you're in. And I've heard a number of people say, something along the lines of, well, my mom was always telling my brother to chew with his mouth closed, or my mom was always after my dad to do such and such differently at the table. And this child grows up hearing this and becomes more aware and more sensitized to that behavior. We have a joke that it's contagious. It isn't contagious, but people who are around somebody tend to start looking out for the same things that bother that person, just being on guard for it. Those things can begin to be sort of triggering to that person as well. It's very possibly a combination, or it may be that for some people it's genetic and for other people it's epigenetic, it's environmental. It kind of, in a way, matters, and in another way, it doesn't matter. It matters what we do about it.
Well, I'm pretty sure those of us, I feel like I tell people after 30 years, I have a shadow case of misophonia from working with so many thousands of people.
Mhm.
I've become heightened in my awareness, just like if somebody came in and talked about red nosed isopods, I would see them everywhere, that thing you have in your brain. But I don't know. We're going to see. There was a new article on the genetics of misophonia. And as a matter of fact, what was that thing? Ancestry or something? 123Me, something that genetics group
Yeah.
we had came to a conference and talked about it or something. So
Yeah.
we don't know yet. There's a lot of things we don't know yet. Isn't that frustrating? I wish we knew a little more.
It's frustrating. It's also, to me, it's fascinating that this disorder, if you want to call it that, whatever it is, this condition is so complicated. It is, that's why I think it's a standalone and not a subset of something else. It has so many aspects that show up in so many different ways, and it's very complicated.
I do collect that data on my intake forms now 30 years, where I ask if a family member also has misophonia, and you'd be surprised. I think it's around 40% or so. I've never done and gone back to look through all those files, but I'm pretty sure it's about 40%. And it might be an aunt or grandmother.
Or one of the questions I asked that's along those lines is, or does anybody in your family tree here have something else that's neurological? Because it may be that they're just propensity toward some kind of neurological. Maybe they have Parkinson's, maybe they have Alzheimer's, maybe they have some other kind of, maybe they have ADHD. A lot of people have that nowadays. Maybe it's that, but somehow those things might be related in a family tree. We don't know.
Well, that's a really important point because when that article came out in 2011 in the New York Times, my phone just rang off the hook. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew it would be a big thing. And there was an article in Reader's Digest too. But the thing is, people would call and I'd hear sobbing on the other end of the line. It was an adult who said, I thought I was crazy. Because children that have misophonia figure it out really fast. Between 9 to 13, they realize almost instantly they're not like everybody else at the table or in the room. They recognize their isolated, strange reactions to things that don't bother other people. I guess we're very good at this as a species. And then they get real quiet about it because they don't want to be embarrassed. They feel ashamed. And that issue has bothered me for decades, that people have something wrong and then they feel ashamed. That's just not good medicine, I don't think.
So let's switch hats for a moment here because we have a few questions about Misocon. Maybe we can get to one, maybe both of them. Shameless plug time. I think Jackie put this one in here by proxy. I'm an adult sufferer attending Misocon in October. My parents are considering attending too. but I want to make sure they can get the most out of it. Will the breakout groups for parents of kids with misophonia also be applicable for parents of adult kids?
I think Dr. Jaffe should answer that one.
Well, I saw that question posted on one of the Facebook groups, and my answer to that was somebody else answered that they were in that situation last year, I think it was, and they found that going to the group with parents was useful in that they could help other people too, because they were at a different stage of in this development. I think one possibility, if there were enough people in that situation who were parents of an adult with misophonia, we could potentially have a different discussion group. In the meantime, if we don't happen to have enough people for that to make any sense, I would think you could go to either the group for parents because you are still a parent and you have a lot of experience with what it was like growing up with that child who's now an adult. Or if you want, possibly you could go to the group of partners because you're now dealing at a different age level. So maybe that person is sort of your partner that you have to relate with.
Yeah, we really would love to see everybody come to MesoCon. We really need people to come to Tulsa, Oklahoma on October. We need you to come. We need you to tell people to come because we want to put this great show on. We've got all these wonderful presenters, incredible topics again, but we need to have enough people to make it work. So if you have an inclination, if you're thinking about it, please consider and come. And every year we have such a good time.
One more question about the convention. How does the annual convention address misophonia triggers? I mean, how would one feel safe attending? It's a good question. Is there any value to a person who doesn't have misophonia to attend?
Why don't you answer that question, John?
Really? Okay. Let's
How
see.
do we prepare?
You know what? I prepare the same way I prepare for anything else. And I remember my first convention was in Vegas, and I didn't know any of you people yet. I thought, that's weird. I bet some people won't go because it's in Vegas. And sure enough, I was right. And yet it still was huge. That was, I think, one of the bigger conventions. But yes, I do know people who didn't attend for that very reason because they were worried the sound of coins dropping in the slots would trigger them. Now, me personally, one of the things that I find frustrating with misophonia is that we don't all have the exact same triggers. And there's nothing in Vegas I worry about. I can hear it in LA. So I was perfectly fine. I just prepare for a convention the same way I prepare for any other situation. Have my tools with me, be ready to walk out of a room.
But how do we prepare? What do we do at the convention to make sure people are as the least triggered as possible?
I misunderstood the question, and I apologize for that since I was reading it. That's intelligent. So we have some rules, one of which I broke at the last one, and Dr. Johnson rightfully scolded me for. You're not supposed to drink in the room because obviously drinks can cause big triggers. So what we recommend is that you leave the cup with your name on it on one of the tables outside, and lots of people do that. And me mistakenly, I walked in with a drink because other people were doing it and it was just getting started and I didn't even make the connection for some reason. And I will never do that again.
And what else do we do?
Also, go ahead.
What about our snacks? What do we do?
Yeah, Dr. Cindy Simon, who I wish were here to answer some of these because I see some that would be right up her alley. She makes sure that we have the quietest possible foods. She takes care of the catering. There's a lot of snacks served and stuff. And then sometimes with the exception of Vegas and maybe one or two other times early on, we do this at an Embassy Suites. And she gets together with the Embassy Suites catering people and tries to come up with quiet meals being offered for lunch, which, by the way, you got to pay for the lunches, okay? But they try to come up with a menu that's miso friendly.
We also go to, speaking of Embassy Suites, they all have a water feature in their lobby. And so that creates an ambiance in the background. And their lobbies are big. So you can get food from the cafeteria. They have a breakfast that's included, by the way, for make it more user-friendly for families. You can get your food and go way off there in the corner and be away from other people. It's an absolutely excellent situation as far as that goes. We don't allow food or drink in the meeting room. We try to separate people who want to type and put them over in one area and things like that. Can we possibly mute all sounds? No, of course we can't. The world won't let us do that. But we do the best that we can. And here's the really cool thing. There is not a single person there who will not get it. Everybody knows what the problem is. And you don't have to explain anything. You can get up and walk out if you need to. You can come back. You're welcome, no matter what. People are astonished at how supportive the environment is and how, why would I go somewhere with all these people when I can't stand sounds? And it turns out to be a wonderful experience. Make good friends for a lifetime, maybe. The kids, we have a youth track, and they make friends that they're in contact with, all year long that they've met through the youth track. So it's a very safe environment for families and for kids. We had one time, I remember a kid who wouldn't come out of the room, and the other kids went up there and said, "Hey, come on, participate with us," and encouraged them. It's
The
really.
other the other two factors we should mention is we go to Embassy Suites because a suite, there's a bedroom and then there's a living room. There's a door that closes between them, not like a hotel room where you walk in and there's two queen beds or something. So this allows you to have two sleeping spaces, which works really well for people with misophonia. And the other thing is just that they're pretty affordable. They're not like staying at a real fancy hotel, but they're very nice. And there was something else we do. Oh, we make sure that the speakers don't do it like excessive gesturing or things like that. You have to kind of follow along with the rules and try to limit your movements, which we have practiced. We're not perfect, but we practice. Okay. So we've gone. And if you want to get involved with us and help put on the convention, we always like participants to help us structure it even better. Last year we had this guy named Eduardo or something, or Estudio, or I can't remember his name, but he was in Dallas and he led like country line dancing. He had a cowboy hat and a perfect outfit, and he had the right music. And I swear every single person at the convention danced for an hour, and everybody had a terrific time.
And if you'd
So,
ask somebody ahead of time, do you think that people are going to go and say, "Oh no, it's going to be too much noise and it'll be too much movement"? And everybody had a great time.
so
Yeah, let
it's
me
fun, not boring.
let me add something to that. And it kind of goes back to where I was headed when I misunderstood part of the question earlier. But to some degree, we as a miso family, which if you go, you're going to find that's what it turns out to be, a miso family. We got to support each other too. We don't all have the same triggers, and if you haven't been, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes we trigger each other. Okay, so going back to the tools, you might have to walk out of a particular seminar if something's going on that can't be controlled. Like, for example, a broken air conditioner, which happened a couple of years ago. They're not all going to be like that. There will be other good situations. And in turn, try to be aware of if you're triggering someone else. And when we went to Denver, let's just say my throat wasn't reacting to the environment very well out there. I actually spent a lot of time in the back of the room, in the doorway, or even outside the room where I could still hear because I knew that I was triggering other people. And I think it's great the way we look out for each other that way.
Yeah,
Ready for a new question?
sure. We've got about 11 minutes here, it says on my watch.
Okay. How do you navigate discipline and compassion? My 18-year-old daughter often yells at her dad and her older brother. And her older brother thinks she gets away with her bad behavior because I, the mom, have compassion for what she's experiencing.
Let me tackle that to begin with, because I'm just the audiologist, but I'll tell you that siblings have a huge role in this field of misophonia. And I like to say misophonia is a family situation because everybody in a family suffers with misophonia. everybody. And I have a form I created for siblings to fill out about how they think that their sibling with misophonia is functioning and doing because of this issue. But I asked my patients, like this 18-year-old, to think of green light, yellow light, and red light. So she's at the table and everything's great, green light or wherever they are. When she starts to feel yellow, like the yellow caution, like I'm starting to feel these feelings, that's actually the time to depart. If you wait till you're in the red zone and you're like flat out completely lost it, then you're going to yell and scream at people and make a deal, and it can cause a lot of hurt feelings. So that's just a little plan I've suggested to those older teenagers, and I remind them that they're going to be leaving home soon. Things will be different.
I'm happy with that answer. Go on to something else, John. That's a good one.
So just to fix something here, and I'm wearing an Apple Watch. My watch says we have 13 minutes left. I don't know if yours is set with the atomic clock or not.
Yeah.
Do we go with that?
At 12 a.m.
Might have a talking watch, John.
Okay. I see at least two more questions I'd like to try to squeeze in. My watch talks too. It has Mickey Mouse on it sometimes. At this point, is there any forms of therapy or treatment that can improve misophonia, or is all we have right now to manage and avoid triggers?
I'll take that. There are many approaches that have been developed over the last few years that are having really pretty good success with doing more than just managing triggers and doing more than just leave the room or doing more than just blocking a sound with earplugs. There are a number of approaches. The audiologists have things that they contribute. The occupational therapists have things they contribute. By the way, there are going to be a group of 4 occupational therapists doing a presentation at this convention that I want to go to. It sounds like it's going to be awesome, using kind of an experiential approach to how can you deal with this. There are a number of therapies, psychotherapies, that are somatic based. They're using hypnosis, they're using memory reconsolidation, they're using somatic approaches that have to do with the body. There are a lot of different approaches that are actually making a difference and turning the corner. Is it cured? That's a good question. I don't know if those people are cured. We don't like using that word, but have they come to a place where they're managing their life much more successfully? Absolutely. Don't.
I kind of hate that question. I hate it because I know we need something that really changes the dynamics of this condition. And I feel like the psychological talking therapy approaches have run basically wildly ahead of any physiologic programs or medications or substances. I feel like we have a good friend, Dr. Jaden Webb, who's on our advisory board. He's a psychiatrist that has a wonderful clinic in Colorado. I think it's called Bliss or something. And he's experimenting with different psychotropic medications, trying to find something to unlock the part of the brain. So there are a lot of treatments that can help. I'll agree with that. I just read the Misophonia Research Fund, which had that $15 million. They had an article by their director about 5 significant advances in the field of misophonia. And just remember, we struggled along like kind of like a PTA group for 20 years. And then we did inspire this interest. We were the ones that were banging on the drum and riding around like Patrick Henry or something on the horse. And then this group was formed and came out and created this fund. So there's finally, in the last 6-7 years, been scientific research of a higher nature. Okay. A lot of the things you see being done around the world for therapy are people that are in a field and they've adapted something for misophonia, trying to help people. They've taken what they know and they shift it over to this situation. But I wish we had more, like, I wish we had more depth in terms of biochemical solutions or electrical magnetic solutions or surgical solutions or something beyond, where people, in Lauren's article, she wrote about the advance of cognitive behavioral therapy for misophonia. Mm-hmm. And I've seen cognitive behavioral therapy for tinnitus. I see it for just about all kinds of psychological conditions you can think of, body dysmorphia or something. I mean, there's just like, it's like a universal Band-Aid. I was thinking the other day, like CBT can't fix everything, but it helps. And it does help if you get understanding of yourself and your responses. If you can understand yourself better as a person with misophonia, and you have choices of things you can do. And this is what Dr. Jaffe, she specializes in this. People love her. She gives them things to do in the moment, things that she can do right now. They're not looking at chinchilla cells or amorphous atoms in the universe. I mean, she's like right down to earth, like, here's what you can do now. But it would be really interesting if we could get Dr. Jaffe to write an article called Helpful Therapies of 2026.
I actually have a little section so I have a book that is almost out that's for parents of younger children, because I think that is a really difficult group. They're too young for a lot of the talk kinds of therapies, and so I've decided that I needed to help parents. It's got a workbook in it, but there's also a section in the book that describes a bunch of those therapies. I guess I could take it. I could take that out and give it to Jackie, and she could turn it into a blog post. That's a good idea. That's
yeah,
good.
that was. I mean, we're all looking for that important next step, and maybe something that combines the neurophysiologic and the cognitive emotional.
Yeah,
there has to be something, right? I mean, you don't.
I'll do that, Jackie.
Okay.
I'll send you something. We'll turn it into a blog. I just marked two other questions in there.
You do John's job for him. Okay.
Why am I here?
I know.
One of them is something that Marsha was just mentioning, which there's a question about pharmaceuticals. There is no medication that treats misophonia, but there are things that help with some of the symptoms. They're anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications, and for some people, those are helpful. Dr. Webb is working he's got a controlled study to try to determine the efficacy of propranolol, which is a beta blocker. So beta blockers are used for people who have heart disease, and what they do is bring down the heartbeat, the rapid heart. If somebody had a rapid heartbeat, or they're having difficulty with their anxiety and the feeling of their heart getting out of control, one of those medications, propranolol, beta blockers, does that. Well, that's a feeling that people with misophonia have. So and anecdotally, it works, but there aren't any controlled studies yet. So he's conducting that right now, and I'm pretty sure by the time we get to October for the convention, he'll have some report on that, as far as that goes for medication. I don't remember what the other question was that I tagged.
Okay. Well, let me do one, and maybe you can find that, or I'll look for it at while you do this one. How can a person get diagnosed for misophonia as a minor? I go to college next year, and I'm very worried about not being able to get rooming accommodations or being misunderstood by professors without a diagnosis. That's a good question.
Yeah.
On our website, we have 30 some providers across the country. Those 30 some providers across the country can issue you a letter of diagnosis. I do this all the time, and you can get accommodation for college or the workplace, or even in elementary school, high school, junior high. We do this all the time for people. It's not hard. It's probably hard if you just try to call like some random person and say, can you give me a diagnosis, because you really need to reach out to somebody who has some kind of association with this. And again, you can may not find somebody down the street, but maybe you'll go in a little trip and see them. Okay.
Well, or you see them online, but
Right.
it also works. I've written a lot of those letters. I could say to this person, it's easier, and to parents who have kids that are still in high school or younger, it's easier if you've already established this while you're in high school or elementary school, middle school, to have already gotten accommodations. And then you can say when you're going to college, and I had accommodations for this and that. It's just another step that would be helpful to take. If you haven't done that, it's still fine. You can still get a letter that will help you in class and in dorms. They have single dorm rooms, or they have single room within a suite. You can apply for those rooms. I suggest you look at the dorm situation when you're looking at colleges. I want this kind of school because I'm interested in this field of study and they have it at this school. Oh, by the way, do they have any dorms that are going to work for me? And if they don't, maybe you're going to find a different school that'll be more helpful. But we can write those letters and get it. It's part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So you are entitled at any public institution to have those sorts of accommodations given to you. If you're at a private institution, they usually are cooperative because they want your money. They want you to enroll there. So they'll accommodate you pretty much.
And they're used to this. They have whole departments of working with students with disabilities and handicaps. So don't hesitate. And it's not just the rooming, it's also note taking and test taking. There are 3 different areas you can get accommodation for. And in the workplace, you can get a private office, you can work remotely. We do this all the time, but just look at these people that are on that list and find somebody that you can work with. Okay.
That was the other question that I had tagged, was the work environment that Marsha just raised. You can get accommodations in your work environment as well. HR has to talk to you and find what you need. You may or may not be able to get everything you want. I've had people allowed to wear headphones. They're allowed to have their door closed on their office rather than having it open. They're allowed to work in a more secluded area. They're allowed to work from home. All those kinds of accommodations can be made, assuming that you're doing a good job at the job or you know how to do the job. So they want you to be working there.
That's true. We're just about out of time. I want to share one piece of good news with you. What's it? Because I feel like we're going to run out of the moment. But, uh, these things I've noticed almost 30 years of working with this population. I have noticed certain things. And I said for years that I felt like people with misophonia have higher IQs than average. I'll stand by that statement. And slowly, it's been interesting. The Misophonia Research Fund, these guys are doing the research and they're finding the things I've been saying for years and they're verifying it. I can't tell you how good that makes me feel. But one of my comments I always tell, whether they're 7 or 70, I say, look, you guys are smarter than the average bears. So you go to college, then you go to graduate school because you want to get the office with the door that shuts. You don't want to work on the floor with 60 people eating all the time and things. So they always laugh, but it's true. It is true. So if you're in a position, somebody that's in a very uncomfortable situation, make steps to change that so you get an office with a door that shuts. Okay? And be of good cheer because that's one of the few good things that comes out of misophonia.
Well, one of the other good things is that the people with misophonia, in my experience, have a very high attention to detail. They notice things, and that makes them very good at certain occupations. They can see details that other people miss, and that there are many occupations where that is useful. I mean, coding is an obvious one, but there are many other places too. So,
please give us a thumbs up or a heart in the text if you enjoyed today. We certainly enjoyed meeting you. Please let us know that you enjoyed this free session and that you got something out of it. And it'll encourage us to have another one. We like to do these. Please don't forget about the global outreach for misophonia, September 13th. We're going to be interviewing people around the world who have misophonia, different countries. And then please come to the convention on October 22nd to the 24th and sign up. Don't forget, we offer some financial aid if you're low income, and come and join us for an amazing experience for 3 days. And we'd love to see you there.
It'll be a blast, a very quiet blast.
And by the one thing about the convention, it's in a hotel. We have a block of rooms set aside. Those rooms are going to sell out. So if you're thinking of coming and you want to stay in the hotel, which I think you probably would like to do because then you get to hang out with people after the meetings and things like that, get your hotel reservation.
Yeah.
Oh, in the bar.
Sleep in the bar like John does. No, I'm just kidding. He does it. Okay, guys. Thank you, John Smoot. You are a fellow we all love dearly. Thank you, for steadying us through these waters of change. So on we go.
Thank you, everybody.
Strong.
See you next time.
Yes, it's going to be recorded. It'll be posted on the Facebook and the webpage. So check it out. Sorry about yelling at my husband, but he's got a cough and I'm like, stop. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.